morning. All right, we're testing some new software this morning. We're going to see if this works. So just bear with me this morning. All right, we're testing some new software this morning. We're going to see if this works. So just bear with me this morning. Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. Morning, everybody. I have audio, so that's a good thing. And that was a... I have audio, so that's a good thing. And that was a... Just a few more minutes and we'll get started here today talking about chenille. Oh, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody had a nice evening. It rained a lot here last night. So it was actually kind of relaxing to hear the rain outside. So it was nice as I sat and put the finishing touches on things. And I'll tell you, I have a lot of sewing rooms, okay, between what gets stored here at Material Girls and then what gets taken home and put away and put other places. And I have torn stuff apart this morning, thinking that stuff was here and it's not here, and so it must be at home, but I looked at home and I can't find it there either, so who knows. So there are a couple of things that I wanted to show you in terms of samples that I can't locate. So if I do locate them, I will gladly share. Yes, I'm really little this morning, Miss Ellen, because you really want to see the pictures and things I have to share today. So for the most part, at the start here, I'll be just a little tiny square in the corner. You don't need to see that much of me that early. Yeah, there may be a little bit of an echo. It's just because I'm in the Bernina room and I don't have a that, and I also have my phone here. I'm trying to make sure that everything is correct. So I'm turning the phone volume down, so that may be the echo, the main echo that you hear. Trying to test some things. Unfortunately, see, I told you last week that the other week we needed a bigger iPad, but now I'm thinking I need a Mac, because then that way this and the computer will talk to each other. And right now I got a Microsoft computer and I work with Apple products, mobile Apple products, and so working that way. But yes, I am a small square in the corner. There's nothing wrong with your screens. I have some picture images and stuff today that I wanted to show you because I don't have I'm going to also try to not play with my hair. I don't have a lot of samples using chenille, okay, and some of them are fairly big, but I wanted to show you some inspiration, and the only way to do that was for me to get you some pictures, and they're much prettier when you can see them in picture format than me printing off a copy and holding them up in front of the camera. So, okay. Let's go ahead and get started. It's 8:35. Good morning. Welcome to Virtual Breakfast Club with Material Girls. And today we're going to talk about chenille. We're going to talk about chenille in two aspects. There is the traditional faux chenille, which is all done on the sewing machine. And then we have a product called Blooming Bias or Faux Chenille that is also done on the sewing machine. So the techniques that I'm doing today, again, are all sewing machine based, not machine embroidery, not serger, sewing machine. I know that there are chenille techniques that are done on the embroidery machine, and basically it's the same concept of what we do sewing. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear the echo is gone. It was probably just my phone when I was testing the audio to make sure that I actually had audio, because when I ran this test last night with my family group, I had to figure out audio. So I didn't have any audio, so I wanted to make sure that audio was working this morning before I started. So let's talk about first, we're going to talk about traditional faux chenille quilts. Okay, so many of you probably know chenille as like this fabric. You probably remember back growing up, bed covers, things along that, maybe even robes and pillows made with chenille fabric. So traditional faux chenille is going to give us basically the same effect, but using fabric, okay, and using the bias of fabric to get that ruffle, or what we call bloom, that's there. Okay, so when you talk about chenille and making your own chenille quilts, typically we do this with cotton, homespun yarn dye fabrics, flannels, all of which work well with chenille. What the little sheep that you're looking at here in the image is a cotton panel, okay? And you just want fabrics that are, loosely woven, that when you cut them on the bias and wash them, they're going to do what we call bloom. So they're going to curl up and kind of ruffle, if you should say. So it's going to be something along, oops, get the camera, along that, okay? The number of layers that you use for chenille is really going to be dependent upon what fabric you're starting with. So if you're starting with flannel, you may not want as many layers as you would for cotton. Cotton fabric, it takes a little bit more to get a really full bloom to it. So I typically go with 5 layers. 1 for the back that won't get cut, and 4 for the top that does get cut. Okay, so all 4 of the top layers will get cut. And when it washes, it will look like what you're seeing here. In the last few years, we've seen chenille, this faux chenille technique, come back. And it has come back with panels. And so taking 3 or 4 panels, stacking them up, backing them to, a coordinating piece of cotton, something like that, and then creating what you're seeing there on the right. So how do we do this particular technique? You're going to take your fabric and you're going to stack it up. Okay, so if you have a backing piece that you're using, the backing is going to go right side down. Okay, then all your other pieces are going to get stacked right side up. Okay, and in that, really your color order or how you stack them up is really going to be dependent on you and what you may want to see more of or less of in that aspect. They don't even have to be super exact in size. You can see it really, once the chenilling and sewing is done, you're going to trim it all up to be square. Okay? And so you don't have to spend don't have to spend a lot of time like layering and basting this like you would a traditional quilt. Okay, it's very forgiving. Once you have it layered, you can then draw a line on the diagonal. So the 45 degree, remember that's bias in fabric, and that's going to give us the, along the bias of the fabric, it's going to give us the nicest little bloom and the nicest little ruffle without causing a ton of fraying, okay, in our fabric. We're going to draw one line, okay? All you need is one line, because every line that we sew after that is going to be a presser foot width apart from the previously stitched line, or you can use the seam guides that come with your feet, or at least the feet of a Bernina that come with it, to measure a particular distance apart, okay? So, well, let's come back here. Depending upon, one second here, okay. Depending upon what you're doing will depend upon what size channel, figuring out this software. I actually need a second screen here. I think it would be easier with. If you're doing flannel, the channels could be maybe every ½ inch apart. With working with cotton, because it's not as fluffy as flannel, you may find that a smaller channel is going to give you a greater bloom. So let me show you, see if you can see. Let's do this, and I'll put this on the bigger camera in a little bit. And then you're just going to sew those. I wouldn't do anything smaller than 1/4 inch, and I really wouldn't do anything larger than, to be honest, a ½ inch. ½ inch being your max. And for the Bernina owners that are out there today, that's about the width of your walking foot. Okay, and I would be using a walking foot, or for those that have machines with dual feed, you could use your D-feet for this, and that would be about the width of your number 1C foot, or your 1D foot is going to give you about that ½ inch. And you're literally going to just sew these diagonal lines until you completely fill your square, your rectangle, or whatever you are going to be sewing. Okay? So once you have done this and you've done your sewing here, the next thing would be is to cut it. Okay? Now, cutting wise, I like what you're seeing here. This is the newest. I don't want to say it's new because it's been around for a few years, but some of you may remember this little tool, which is great, but this one's even better. Okay, so the chenille cutter that you're looking at on screen here, the yellow one, there are 4 different size channel guides. Okay, so those are the little pieces around the sides that are, depending on the width of your guide, will depend upon which of the ones that you slide into your channel. And I'm going to demonstrate it in a moment. I'm going to show you all the images and then we're going to talk about it. Now, with this, once you get your guide chosen and into your channel, the rotary blade that's inside of here does not actually rotate. It stays in place. So this is kind of like taking a pair of scissors across a piece of paper, okay? And so you see that there are 24 numbers here, okay? And so you locate the blade at one number, and then you use that number until it kind of stops cutting. And then that means it's kind of dull in that area, so then you click the middle to get to a new edge, and then you cut until that one kind of dulls out. And then you just keep working your way around, excuse me, until that blade needs to be replaced, and then it pops out and you put a new one in. And you can just really go to town. It is much faster than it used to be. Okay. Yes, so 5 layers of cotton. I would do, if this was flannel, I would do probably 4 layers, I believe is what I did. That's the quilt I couldn't find this morning. It's 4 layers for a flannel quilt is what I did. But you could really play and depend upon that. Okay. So once that is cut and you've done all your cutting, It'll kind of automatically, as you cut, start to bloom. In general, you'll kind of see it start to wave. You're going to square up your edges. You can round the corners if you want. You can leave them square. You can bind it, and then you can wash it. Okay, so no washing until it's completely finished. Miss Ann, I do not put batting in my chenille quilts because of so many layers, and it just adds extra weight to the quilt in general, with 5 layers of flannel on top of each other, or 4 layers of flannel and 5 layers of cotton. But it's completely, you can kind of look at it based upon the density or thickness of your fabric if you want to put batting in it. But I don't typically put batting in the faux chenille quilts like this. Okay? Now, then here's one with a squared corner, okay, that we have. Same concept. You can see stacking different colors up, things along that lines will, give you a range of color, so it doesn't all have to be the same particular piece of fabric that's in there. Okay, so bear with me a second, and we're going to, I think it's going to work, maybe. Maybe. Let's see. Here. It may just be very delayed. I may have to experiment some more on this. So let's see if I can get it to cooperate. All right, so here is a chenille quilt. Well, it's just a rectangle. It's not even a quilt. This one is done with yarn dyed fabrics. Okay, and so yarn dyes are woven, lightweight woven fabrics that have, there's no right or wrong to them, but they are, get my hand out of the camera, they are loosely woven. Okay. And then the channels were cut, sewn, about a 1/2 inch apart, and then they were cut with the chenille cutter. So yes, the backing is, for this particular, get my hand out of the camera here, the backing for this particular one, yes, I do see, because the yarn dyes aren't right or wrong, but if you had a particular piece of fabric, you would lay that right side down, so you would see the backing, okay, and you'd see the right side of your backing, and I'll show you that in Mickey Mouse. Okay, so with Mickey Mouse, so here's the back of the Mickey Mouse panel, okay, and so there's my Mickey Mouse backing. That was placed right side down. My channels were sewn from this side, and then when we cut, I didn't cut all the way through to the backing. I left one panel is not cut, and then the other 3 panels were cut. Okay. All right, I'm going to try to get this in a way that you can see it. Now, this, like I said, is the chenille cutter. I'm going to find the one that fits in my opening the best here this morning. So this one here that's laying here now is, I just have a couple of lines cut, and I've got some channels that are sewn. I'm going to find the edge of the chenille cutter that is going to fit the channel that I have in, I'm going to place it into the channel, not cutting the very bottom layer, okay, and we're going to get it started. And I'm just going to slide like that, okay? And then I just continue on so you can see that this here, there's, this one is 6 layers, so there is 5 that I'm cutting through, and then I have 1 on the back that I'm not cutting through, okay? So that is your traditional chenille, and you just keep, after you just literally keep cutting and cutting and cutting, and then you can just square up the edge, clean it all up, and bind it, and then, you know, quickly bind it because you're anxious to get it into the wash because you're dying to see what it looks like, okay? Yes, so it would, if your backing is a little bit larger, or the piece that you're not going to cut through, if that is a little bit larger, it does make it easier to find the channel so that you're not fiddling with this to try to find the bottom layer. I typically will, for like this one here with it being as many layers, I would cut like maybe 2 or 3 layers at once. And so, let me get the right, so I would come here and just run it through and cut a few, so that was 2 layers, and then come back and, you know, work my way through. You could pre-snip with a pair of scissors, but yes, if your backing and your bottom panel are larger than what you plan to cut, it does make it easier to not make a mistake at cutting into a piece that you didn't mean to cut, okay? So once this piece, the bottom piece here was all cut and sewn and cut, this is what it will look like when it is washed, okay? Now I didn't bind this one, it's just serged around the edges because it's just a sample to show people chenille, but that kind of gives you the idea. So there's the bottom layer that doesn't get cut in there, and then all the other layers ruffle. This is a yarn dye fabric that I have right here. Okay. All right. Okay. So again, you're just sewing multiple lines over and over and over again. Okay, so I have a bunch of channels. I'm going to get my cutter in here, and I'm just going to pull it across. Okay, all the way across until that channel is completely cut. And then I would just keep doing that until everything was cut. The fabric, what stops the fabric from fraying is that the fact that you're doing on the bias, okay? It's not, it will fray till it hits that point in the weave, and then it stops, okay? So it's just because you would not want to do this with vertical or horizontal lines. It has to be 45, okay? It has to be on the 45-degree angle. Okay. All right. Let's go back here. Let's turn that off and go back to looking at what the modern take on chenille is. Okay. All right. So the modern take on chenille is using a product called Chenille Blooming Bias faux chenille. It has a couple of names. Mostly Chenille is what we call it. Okay. Chenille is it's a fabric that will automatically bloom when it's washed. You only need one layer of it. You would need, if you wanted the look of what the yarn dye or the chenille would look like, you would need 4 layers of flannel to get what 1 layer of chenille it does. Okay, so it's just another quicker way. It also doesn't use, you're not going to be using 4 and 5 layers of fabric. It is 1 layer of fabric that you are embellishing with this. Chenille or blooming bias comes in 22 different colors. They're not all shown here in this picture. 22 colors, and it comes in 2 different widths, 3/8 and 5/8. Okay, and that, you know, different varieties, you know, depending on what you want. Typically, when I am doing covering the raw edge of applique and things like that, I use the 3/8, and the 5/8 I use when I am doing a faux binding technique with the chenille that I will talk about in a moment. Correct, Miss Joanne. So I sew at a 45-degree angle. So when I'm sewing, the fabric is being pushed through the machine at a 45-degree angle. So how does it work? You're going to cover the raw edge of your applique with the 3/8 inch chenille. You're going to stitch down the center of the tape. Okay. 1 layer is just fine, but you can use more. The more layers you do, the fluffier it's going to be. And what's great about it is when you come to a corner, there's no right or wrong side to this tape, and you just flip it, you know, just round the corner, flip it over, and continue stitching. Okay? It is easy to do. So before I show you some images, let me show you how it's done. All right. So I'm going to try to move this camera to be a little bit more. Pardon me, close your eyes if you're motion sick people. All right, maybe that will. Maybe that. Yes, it is the little 3/8 inch wide strips, and yes, Miss Virginia, this was used for an owl branch in a project. Okay, so I have a piece of fabric, and here is a piece of chenille. Okay, skinny, little. I like to use my number 1 foot. Okay, you can use a number 20 foot, however you like. I like the number 1 because it's got that mark down the center of the foot that I can kind of keep in the middle, and in the 3/8, the opening in the middle of the toe kind of sits and straddles the tape for me. Okay, your clear 34, 34C work really well too. Oops. So you're going to position it, you would position it right on the edge of your applique, and then I'm just going to sew right down the middle. Okay, when you get to a corner or you want to round a corner, all I would do is kind of rotate it, flip the corner. You can round the corner, get my hand out of the way. Okay. Let's see. And this is what it would look like. Okay. So it's just got a, line down the center. I typically match to a light color thread or a thread color that matches When it is washed and ravels up, you don't really see the thread, but I honestly you wouldn't do this with super contrasting thread. When I come back around, I would just come back around and slightly overlap the beginning and the end, so it just closed the design. And then you would, let me lay this up here. A lot of you have seen this quilt. Okay. So this is one layer of the 3/8 inch chenille. So you can see, I mean, you can't see the stitching that's running down the middle of this, okay? And once my chenille is on, then you quilt your quilt, and then you bind it and wash it, okay? So this one has a variety of colors. I have a bigger picture here in a minute that I will show you, okay? The other one I have here is, I don't know, let's see. Again, sorry if you're sick. This here is, that's the machine, come this way. This here spells out the word Mary. See? Now I'm big. So this here was just, I took a washable marker and I hand wrote the word Mary in my handwriting. This is a multiple layer, oh, there's thread there, multiple layers. So this actually has the base is a 5/8 inch red, then there is a 5/8 inch green, and then a 3/8 inch red, all stacked on top of each other and then stitched through the middle at one time. And then I quilted the pillow and then made the pillow. Okay, so it doesn't have to be one layer. It doesn't have to be one layer of the same color, and it doesn't have to be one layer of the same size. Okay, so you can change and flip them and all that good stuff. Okay. All right, so let's go back to some inspirational images in PowerPoint. Okay, because that's really the fun, where the fun starts. We've seen this in the last year of using chenille. It has kind of made a resurgence in the industry with panels, okay, and embellishing already printed panels and adding a little bit of oomph to it, okay. So this is, okay, panel on the left is Peter Pan, and I actually have kits for this particular project right here, the Peter Pan project. We have kits available. It is a printed panel that has been embellished with the chenille and then quilted and bound and so on and so forth. Let me go, give me 1 second, let me go grab a panel. I mean, the panel's great and it's wonderful, but the let's see, let's come back to this, let's come back to this. We don't need that one on. Let's see if, so here's your panel. I mean, it's nice, it's beautiful, but the chenille just adds some depth and texture to this project. Let's see if I can get, wrong direction. This camera's mirror imaged, okay? So, oh, anybody can do this. This is such an easy thing. One, there's no wrong. Yes, so the gray that you're seeing in these clouds is all chenille, okay, that's been stitched over top of. And for the most part, you're just following the already printed black lines that you are seeing in the panel. So you're covering up all of the detail lines that you see on the panel. The quilt on your right in the image is a applique quilt. Okay, so big squares, two applique shapes, and they're just fused down. There's no blanket stitch or satin stitch or decorative stitch applique for that. And then add the chenille on top. Okay. Questions were, do I drop the feed dogs for the curves? No, I did it with all my with my feet up, just stopping and pivoting for the most part. For my long arm and mid arm owner machines, you could do this free motion. Okay. Lay it out, couple of stitches, and then, reposition the next bit of fabric. The little quilt here on the left is the three kitty cats. It has the multicolored different shades of the chenille added to give the kitty cats some texture. You have the hexagons that are on the right in this image that will give you the ability to get that grandmother's flower garden without having to piece those particular hexagons. And so again, they're just, stitched down or fused down, pinned down, and then the chenille is going over the outside edge of that particular raw edges of those fabrics, and then you get the appearance there. Great for baby quilts and baby things, lots of texture to them. So you have the quilt here on the left that has an applique in the middle, and then the border, which you would have never been able to do one with piecing. And then adding it after all the applique was finished, and then adding that border element is just fantastic. You could, on that quilt, you could have done the applique before you sewed them together into the big. You could have done the chenille before you sewed them together into the big blocks, yes. Or you could have done it after it was pieced. Completely your choice, but yes. Around the edge of letters that on pillows. So you see here, this is just, would be a nice pillow if it just had the applique on it, but it adds another level to it when you add the, chenille around the edge. Just gives it a funness to it. Very easy. Pieced pillow, stitch the chenille into a grid, and then at the intersection a button was placed. That looks to me very vintage. That gives me a vintage, back in the day of chenille robes and all of that kind of stuff. The quilt on the right is the one I could not locate this morning. It's obviously somewhere. It is a standard zigzag. So they're just half square triangles that were pieced into the chevron, and then there were lines of blooming bias that were added in the white section, just to add a little bit of additional texture to the quilt. So, very basic. I mean, it's just white, very quick. The quilt is, I really wish I could have found it. It hung in here for a while, so some of you may remember it. This one is stunning because you probably think, okay, I see it for children, I see it for that kind of things. This is a batik quilt, okay? Background was pieced. The oval shapes on top were fused on, And then around the outside edge were added the dark chenille blooming bias, and then it was added around the outside edge of each larger square. Really stunning, overall stunning. And from a distance, you don't really see it in the far out version, but close up, I mean, it really is beautiful. Cute, whimsical, again, basic quilt, basic applique, using, excuse me, let me get something to drink. Getting something, using the anchors to add another layer of embellishment to that quilt, adding a little bit of additional design to jazz it up a little bit more. So just something fun. This one is stunning. This is a pre-printed panel, okay, that was then embellished with the blooming bias strips. In the upper right hand corner you can see the detail of the flowers that are in the lower half of the quilt, and then in the center of the quilt the words that were printed on the panel were stitched over with white chenille. Okay, very similar to another quilt that you're getting ready to see images of, which would be this quilt, which also hung here in the store for a little bit, and it's still here. So we just took this very beautiful panel, but flat in terms of what it was, and really dressed it up by just tracing the already printed words in handwriting with the white chenille, and then on the right hand side you can see what it looks like before it was washed and quilted. So nothing has to follow any shape in particular. It doesn't have to turn corners or anything like that. So it's very, very easy. Okay, it's really it doesn't require a ton of thought, except maybe what color do I want to go where. Okay, and then we have another printed panel with unicorns, and everybody may have recognized the panel on the right, which is the Hoffman Blooming Beauty, I think it was, but that watercolor printed panel that our long armors fell in love with for custom quilting and things like that. So this is just, it's beautiful. I mean, it really adds another dimension and another layer to that particular chenille product. Okay. You can use the chenille for binding. You do not have to bind the quilt. So once your quilt is done, you can, instead of binding, you would trim your edges, again, like you would any quilt, serge it or zigzag it so that it's all secure, and it will help, cut down on raveling and things like that. Then you're going to layer 5/8 inch chenille to the wrong side and stitch it to the wrong side of the quilt. And then you're going to turn the quilt over and repeat with another piece of 5/8 inch chenille it on the right side. And then what you will be left with when it's washed is what you're seeing here at the top of the image on the left. So around the outside edge of it will look like chenille, and you won't have to bind the quilt per se. Okay? Questions? Let's see if I can get something to work here. We're going to try one more thing. I think I've caught most of the questions that were there. It's a lot of fun, it doesn't require a lot of I wouldn't say thought, but you don't have to overthink it. It's not looking for super exactness in it, but it really does give us some, what do I want to say? Some, get my words here. Some flair. Here, there we go. Now I'm bigger. You can see me. I can show you. So this is a little bit better. Okay, so here's the big Mary pillow. Okay, so this pillow, the whole pillow was pieced before I added the writing on it. Okay, go back. I think there was a request to flip this one over. Here's Mickey. Okay, so this was, there are 4 stacked panels, and then 3 of them are cut and 1 of them is not cut. Okay, that way this helps to show through. Okay, and then this one has a back. Okay, and then I know that you've seen this, but I'll show it again because it was hanging up in the back of a couple of other videos. So here's have yourself a merry little Christmas. Okay, so you can see this. Okay, here's this one, all cut and trimmed. I sell this, you can buy it by the roll, but some projects you don't need, like the 3/8 inch, 3/8 inch chenille, I think is like a 25 or 40 yard roll. It's a lot. And if, you know, a project only needs a yard of it, it's a lot to have. So I actually sell it here in the store by the yard. So we have packages that you can, you know, get 2 yards of a particular color for a project. We do have them in rolls as well, in some colors. Nothing special with washing and drying. Okay, I usually just machine wash cold, warm, dry. It's nothing, I didn't wash it on gentle, I just washed it regular. The suggestion in the packaging, you know, important says that you should wash red or dark colors separately. I would throw a couple color catchers in to make sure that, you know, and I do that with any quilt, that fabric doesn't bleed and that the blooming bias doesn't bleed either. We haven't had a problem with that, with the blooming bias at all. The, let's see. Yes, there's 22 different colors. Each of them comes in the 3/8 and the 5/8 inch side. For the binding, it is 1 layer on each side, but if you wanted it to be fluffier and things like that, you could easily do 2 or 3 layers. You could do, you know, 1 layer on the back side and you could stitch 2 layers from the front side for the overall, you know, if you wash it and it doesn't fluff as much as you want it to fluff, sew another one on top of it and then wash it again. It's only going to add and build up. So if you know, missed a section or something didn't, just cut a small piece, stitch it where it's missing something and wash it. If you don't want to wash the whole thing again, spritz it with some water and brush it with a stiff brush. So I usually tell my girls stiff brushes, like a vegetable brush that you would use to clean potatoes and things like that kind of stiff brush, not a grill brush. You may even be able to find a toothbrush that, you know, they call them hard. The texture of them is hard. You could use a hard toothbrush, or a nail brush works really well too. Just something that you can rub back and forth. It will put out a few little fibers per se, but it's not going to think of a rag quilt. It's not going to poo all over. You're not going to have threads and strands of threads forever like a rag quilt, and that's because we've done it on the bias. And so that's a good analogy. So because we did it on the bias, it's not going to ravel like if you had done a rag quilt where we sew vertical and horizontal lines and then clip. Those are all done on straight and crosswise grain. That's why it shreds and sheds for a little bit before it stops. But the bias, the 45-degree bias, will not do that for you. Pattern-wise, I couple of the patterns, a lot of the images and things that you see today came from fauxchenille.com, which is Miss Nanette, who is the creator and of this. Fauxchenille.com. She's on Facebook. She's on YouTube. She's a really cute, on YouTube, a really cute baby blanket that's done with squares with multiple colors of stripes, and then you do that on a long strip, and then you cut them into squares, and then you rotate, so you've got stripes that go this way and stripes that go this way of the chenille, and then she puts the chenille for binding. So it's a really cute free baby pattern that she has on YouTube for you as well. Mickey Mouse panels, yes, we have Mickey Mouse panels. I also have Lion King. I have Disney princesses. We have Monsters Inc. And yes, I'm rocking the Disney today. I'm feeling Disney, so I got my mini bow. I got my Minnie Mouse sneakers, and I'm drinking my breakfast out of my Epcot mug. So I'm still channeling my Disney high from yesterday's fabric. I don't have any more Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas panels. A couple of things that would work really well. The next one, after I do Peter Pan, which was my plan for this week, but that didn't happen. This little guy right here, let me turn him around. He would be really cute this way, done with chenille around him. I think he would be really adorable. Do a couple of random snowflakes around him, outline his glove, his hat, add a little bit, these stupid mirror imaged cameras, a little bit around his earmuffs. I think he'd be cute. His cheeks would be good. We also have the deer. He would be cute too. He is designed, I don't think there's a picture here, but there is a quilt that puts him in the corner, cuts him out as an applique. I think it would be really, really cute to see him edged in chenille around that applique that gets appliqued to the front of that quilt when it's pieced. That's there. So a lot of those, panels. Let me show you. While I have it, here's. So this is a good size. I mean, this is a 36 by 60 panel. Okay, for Peter Pan. And basically what you're doing is you're just covering all of the black outlines. You would be stitching chenille over. Okay. Oh yeah, the Oh Come Let Us Adore Him panel. That would be really could do beautiful subtleness with the white and the grays around that particular panel. But yeah, it may make you think about it. You don't have to do the whole panel, but just sections. If it just looks flat and it just feels like you need something and you're not a master machine quilter, this may be the way to take that panel to the next level if you can't custom quilt it, if that makes sense. Okay? Well, I think that is what I have for you this morning. I don't think I have any other questions here. Let me just scroll back for a minute. Thank you for bearing with me this morning. I'm still going to work on that. What gets me is the time delay. And if I'm watching the comments and what's on my phone or what's actually happening to you, it's a good 15-20 seconds behind what I'm talking about here. So I'm trying to get used to that and figure out camera delays and things at the same time. So trying to make it so that you don't always have to look at me and that you can actually look at the sewing machine or and see what's happening or see multiple things at once. But all right. I think that's all I have for you today. I hope everybody has a great weekend. It looks like it's going to be, at least here, it's going to be a rainy day. It's still pretty gray out there. And I hope you get a chance and an opportunity this weekend to spend some time in your sewing room. please make sure that if you're not part of our Facebook group, not just the page that you're currently on, but we have the MGQB Society group that you can join as well. We do all sorts of sharing, and everybody shares their projects and stuff inside of that. And please feel free to join that group as well. If you have questions and answers and you need help, the group is very, very good at helping each other out for things and so on and so forth. So please feel free to join that group. This video will be uploaded to YouTube here later this afternoon. And so you'll be able to, it'll be way easier to find there than constantly having to come back into Facebook and scroll through. So it will be on the YouTube channel later this afternoon. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great day, and I will see everybody soon. Bye.